For weeks, the world whispered the same question. Who moved that Tesla? Now, an investigator says he knows. And what he's uncovered may rewrite everything we thought we knew about the haunting discovery inside D4vd's car. This is a story that everyone's been waiting for, the one that hints the truth might finally be out. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because what's about to unfold will take you deep inside one of the most chilling mysteries in modern Hollywood. The story begins not with a headline, but with a whisper that something about the Tesla found with a body in its trunk was never supposed to happen. When police first discovered the electric car, parked neatly as if someone had carefully returned it, the scene looked almost staged. The body in the trunk, still, silent, and tragic, belonged to a teenager whose name had been quietly spreading through online circles for weeks. The question wasn't just how she died, but who moved the car afterward. Now, months later, a private investigator named Steve Fischer has come forward, claiming he knows exactly who did it. And tonight, you're about to hear the story that could change everything. This is a D4vd Tesla mystery. And according to Fischer, the truth was never buried with the body. It started like a missing person case we've all heard before. A teenage girl, bright creative, caught between high school life and the digital universe, suddenly stopped answering her phone. Her friends thought she was taking a break. Her parents felt something darker. When the Tesla Model 3 belonging to her friend, an up-and-coming musician known online as D4vd, couldn't be located either, the silence grew louder. A week later, that same Tesla appeared in a quiet neighborhood outside Los Angeles. Neighbors noticed it parked at the curb, spotless and unmoving, for almost 2 days before one of them decided to call it in. Police arrived. They opened the trunk, and what they found changed the conversation from missing person to possible homicide. The teenage girl, we'll call her Celeste, was gone, but the way the car got there didn't make sense. Investigators pieced together a timeline using digital forensics. Tesla logs showed the car's movements, even when its owner wasn't behind the wheel. Cameras picked up fragments, brief images of headlights passing down side streets at odd hours. What those records revealed raised more questions than answers. After Celeste's estimated time of death, the Tesla continued to move. It was driven for nearly 40 minutes, parked, then moved again, before ending up at a place where police finally found it. Someone had moved the car. But who? Theories spiraled online. Some said a friend tried to hide evidence. Others thought it was the killer returning to the scene. But months later, the case seemed to stall. That's when Steve Fischer, a veteran private investigator with decades in criminal defense, entered the picture. And according to him, he's seen proof that could blow this entire case open. Before we go further, if you're following this case as closely as we are, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Because by the end of this series, you might have your own theory about who moved that car. Before this story made headlines, Fischer wasn't looking for fame. He's worked quietly behind the scenes for years, consulting on missing person cases and evidence chain disputes. In his interview on the Law and Crime Sidebar podcast, Fischer spoke with a mix of frustration and certainty, the kind that only comes when you've seen something the public hasn't. "I know who moved that Tesla," he said, "and it wasn't who everyone thinks." That single statement set the internet ablaze. Screenshots from Tesla logs began circulating on Reddit. Fans of D4vd's music argued fiercely in comment sections. Some accused Fischer of chasing attention. Others swore he was protecting the real killer. But Fischer didn't back down. He claimed he'd spoken directly with a source inside the circle, someone who knew how the car ended up parked that day and why it was placed so carefully, as if meant to be found. To understand Fischer's claim, we need to look at the digital breadcrumbs that Tesla vehicles automatically record. Every movement, every charge, every time the car door opens, it's logged. Tesla's system can tell investigators who had access, when the key fob was used, and even which seat belts were buckled. According to leaked police summaries obtained by several journalists, the data showed the Tesla was driven using a key card, not the phone app tied to D4vd's account. That detail, small, technical, and easy to miss, could mean everything, because only 3 people reportedly had key cards, and one of them wasn't supposed to be anywhere near that vehicle after Celeste's disappearance. Fischer insists He knows who used that key card. But the police? They've never confirmed or denied his claim. To outsiders, the case looks like a tragic accident tangled in celebrity shadows. But for those who follow the clues, it feels like something darker, a cover-up powered by fear and loyalty. Fischer described his investigation as a race against silence. He tracked messages, interview notes, and GPS records, not as law enforcement, but as someone desperate to fill the gaps the system left behind. He claimed his source wasn't the killer, not directly. Instead, it was someone trying to protect another person, a panic cleanup, as he called it. They thought they were doing the right thing. Fischer said quietly during the interview, they were wrong, but they weren't evil, just scared. That sentence changed how people saw the case. Maybe whoever moved the Tesla wasn't covering up murder. Maybe they were covering up a mistake. Still, the image of that silent car, its trunk hiding the final truth, refused to fade. As the investigation dragged on, online communities began digging deeper. Forum threads, TikTok timelines, and Reddit detectives poured over everything. Parking lot footage, digital timestamps, and statements from D4vd's management team. Some claimed Celeste and D4vd had been together shortly before her death. Others denied any close connection. Law and crime reporters tried to verify Fischer's sources, but he refused to name them, citing safety concerns. He claimed that once the truth comes out, it will expose more than one person's mistake. That line, more than one person's mistake, became the spark that reignited public obsession. Why does this story cut so deep? Maybe because we've all seen versions of it before. A young life lost, fame hovering nearby, and truth buried beneath image management. Celeste wasn't just a statistic. She was someone's daughter, someone's best friend, a teenager who loved music, who posted sketches online, who once tweeted that she felt invisible but wanted to be seen. Now she's being seen, but not in the way she deserved. And the question that haunts every listener of Fischer's interview is painfully simple. If he truly knows who moved that Tesla, why hasn't he said it publicly? Before we go into what Fischer revealed and what the data logs might secretly prove, take a moment to share your thoughts below. Do you think he's telling the truth or protecting someone powerful? When Steve Fischer first went public with his claims, the world thought he was bluffing. A private investigator stepping into a high-profile death case? People assumed it was just another attention grab. But those who knew Fischer personally said otherwise. He wasn't new to controversy. And when he said he had files, he meant it. The story picks up days after the Law and Crime interview aired. In the clip, Fischer sat across from the host, calm but visibly burdened. His eyes told a story he couldn't fully say on record. There are things I can't show you, he said, but I can tell you this much. The person who moved that car was not acting alone. Those words lingered. Not acting alone. For the families watching. For the fans trying to understand. It was a phrase that cracked open a new layer of doubt. If more than one person was involved, who were they protecting? And from what? According to Fischer, the Tesla didn't just move once after Celeste's death. It moved twice. The first time was within hours of when she was last seen alive. The second time came days later, long after the timeline suggested she was gone. Tesla's own internal system logged two separate drivers. Both used the same key card, but from different geolocations. That was the first sign something didn't add up. Fischer described this in what he later called a chain of panic. He believed that the first driver was panicking, trying to figure out what to do. The second was covering for them. And that, he said, was the heart of the mystery. But the data wasn't the only clue. The car's built-in cameras, its sentry mode, recorded fragments of movement, late-night shadows, reflections, maybe a person's arm or leg caught in passing. Police had confirmed they recovered that footage, but none of it had ever been released publicly. Fischer claimed to have seen at least a portion of it, and what he described chilled listeners. He said, "It's not what people think. You don't see a killer. You see someone terrified, pacing around the car. It's someone who's made a terrible mistake." That description shifted the tone of the entire case. It was no longer about a cold-blooded act. It was about a chain reaction of fear, guilt, and protection. But who was that person? And what mistake had they made? While Fischer never named names, He hinted strongly that it was someone within D4vd's extended creative circle, not a family member, not a manager, but someone close enough to have access to his vehicle, someone trusted. Behind the scenes, law enforcement wasn't thrilled about Fischer's involvement. Investigators reportedly reached out to him, warning him about interfering with an open case. Fischer responded by saying he wasn't interfering. He was filling in the blanks they had left open. He insisted he had documents, timestamps, and witness statements that the police had overlooked. He called them the files. And according to him, those files contained evidence that could prove who touched that car after Celeste's death. But not everyone believed him. Online forums exploded with debate. Some accused Fischer trying to shift attention away from D4vd himself. Others believed he was speaking in riddles to protect his source. In one podcast follow-up, Fischer admitted that his source was a person living in fear. He said the source confessed being near the Tesla, moving it, but insisted they didn't know Celeste was inside the trunk. That statement changed everything. Imagine being that person, driving a car that belonged to a friend, thinking you were just moving it to avoid a ticket or hide something minor, then realizing later that there was a body in the trunk the whole time. That kind of trauma could destroy anyone. Fischer said his source hadn't slept in weeks after finding out the truth. They'd moved states, changed numbers, and cut off everyone connected to that night. If true, it meant the case wasn't just about crime. It was about conscience. By this time, media pressure was growing. Law enforcement was being accused of dragging its feet, and public demand for answers was louder than ever. The police eventually released a short statement. The investigation into the movement of the vehicle remains active. We are aware of claims made publicly by Mr. Fischer and continue to evaluate their validity. In other words, they were listening but not talking. Fischer, however, didn't stop. He kept hinting that he had more. During a phone interview with a local reporter, he described a meeting where he allegedly showed a detective portions of his files. The detective, he claimed, looked at him for a long time and said, "You have no idea how close you are." It was a kind of line that sounded too cinematic to be real, but those who followed the case said it matched the way investigators often speak, when the truth is too sensitive to release. Behind closed doors, Fischer was also fighting his own ethical battle. He wanted to protect his source's identity, but he also wanted justice for Celeste. Friends said he would sit up late at night, replaying the same recordings, looking for something, anything, that could make sense of the chaos. One of those recordings, he later revealed, was a phone call made hours before the Tesla was last moved. The voice on the line, trembling and hesitant, said a few words that would haunt Fischer for months. "I can't let him get in trouble." He didn't mean to hurt her. Those 9 words, that single sentence. It implied 2 things. That someone knew Celeste had been hurt, and that someone else was being shielded from blame. But who was he? Fischer said he couldn't say. Not without breaking the law. But the way he said it, the pause, the tightness in his voice, made listeners believe he already had his answer. By now, the story had crossed into viral territory. Hashtags trended daily. Journalists camped outside homes. Even Tesla enthusiasts began analyzing logs and firmware, trying to reconstruct what could have happened. Some even recreated the car's GPS path using public data. They found one strange stop that didn't appear in official records, a parking garage downtown, empty, unmonitored, used by studio workers late at night. That was where Fischer believed the second movement happened. He claimed the Tesla was driven there by someone trying to buy time, maybe to clean it, maybe to think. But the decision to move it again, to park it neatly where it was found, was, in his words, the act of surrender. Whoever did it wanted it to be discovered. They couldn't carry the secret anymore. If that's true, it means the case wasn't just a cover-up. It was a silent confession. The strange part? Police never named a suspect in the car's movement. They confirmed no arrests, no charges, just an ongoing investigation. And as weeks turned into months, the silence grew heavier. Yet Fischer's claims refused to die. He began receiving messages. People saying they, too, had seen the Tesla that night, or knew someone who had. Most turned out to be false leads. But one caught his attention. A witness said they saw 2 people near the car in the early morning hours before police arrived. One male, one female. both wearing hoodies, both looking scared. That witness never came forward publicly. But Fischer said their statement matched his data logs almost exactly. And if that's true, it means Celeste's final hours may have been watched by more eyes than anyone realized. The deeper Fischer went, the more dangerous his investigation became. He hinted that he'd been followed once, that someone had tried to warn him off. He laughed it off in interviews, but the fear in his tone said otherwise. This wasn't just about a single act anymore. It was about what that act revealed about the people orbiting it, the choices they made when panic replaced reason. Through all of this, one truth remained constant. A teenage girl had lost her life, and the car that carried her body had been moved. Fischer's files may have shown the how, but the why was still missing. And until that question is answered, justice remains only half complete. By the end of his last interview, Fischer's tone shifted from certainty to quiet exhaustion. "I know what I know," he said, "but knowing and proving are two different things." He leaned back, paused, and then added, "The truth always shows up eventually. The question is whether people are ready to see it. The world is still waiting to see it." As days turned into weeks, Steve Fischer's voice began to fade from the headlines, but behind closed doors, he was still working. The public only saw fragments of what he'd uncovered. What they didn't know was that Fischer had one more piece of the puzzle, one that tied everything together. A witness he simply called the friend. The friend wasn't just someone on the periphery of the case. According to Fischer, this person was inside the circle. They had been with Celeste and the others during those last days, laughing, filming, creating music, pretending everything was fine. But when tragedy struck, fear took over. And instead of going to police, they followed bad advice. They tried to fix what couldn't be fixed. The witness came forward privately, not to law enforcement, but to Fischer. The reason was simple. They didn't trust anyone else. They were scared that the truth would destroy more than one career. They said there was panic, confusion, and silence that night. And then there was the Tesla. In the friend's account, the car wasn't moved out of malice. It was moved out of desperation. The person who drove it wasn't trying to hide a body. They were trying to protect someone who was already falling apart. The friend told Fischer, "I thought she was asleep. I didn't know. None of us knew." When Fischer heard those words, he said he felt the air leave the room. The witness described seeing the car later that night. The headlights were off. The person behind the wheel looked lost, almost in shock. They didn't speak much. They just said, "I have to make this right." And then they drove away. Hours later, the Tesla appeared in the neighborhood where it was eventually found. To this day, no one knows whether that final drive was confession or goodbye. Fischer didn't release the name of this witness, but he documented everything. Their statements, call logs, and even small details like the clothes they wore that night. He cross-checked those details with Tesla's geolocation data, and they matched perfectly. Wherever that friend was standing, the car was only a few blocks away. But when Fischer tried to turn this over to the police, something strange happened. The department stopped returning his calls. They said they were reviewing the data, but weeks passed with no updates. Fischer grew increasingly frustrated. "They're not looking for truth," he said in a quiet interview. "They're looking for control." What made matters worse was the online circus that followed. People began doxing innocent names, spinning conspiracies, and harassing anyone remotely connected to D4vd. The story had outgrown itself. It wasn't just about Celeste anymore. It had become a reflection of how far people would go to fill the void that silence leaves behind. Still, Fischer pushed on. He believed Celeste's story deserved more than mystery. He said she wasn't just a victim. She was a symbol of how easily truth can be buried under fear. "I think she knew too much," he once said. Not about crime, but about people. And that scared them. By this time, the friend, the secret witness, was unraveling. In one of Fischer's private recordings, the friend's voice cracked mid-sentence. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I just wanted to help. I thought if I moved the car, it would all go away." They paused for a long time, then whispered, "But it didn't. It followed me." Those recordings never reached the public. Fischer said releasing them would destroy lives. But their existence raised new questions. Was this person admitting to moving the Tesla? And if so, why weren't they charged? The answer may lie in a quiet agreement between lawyers and investigators, the kind of unspoken deal made when someone's guilt is clouded by someone else's power. The last message Fischer received from a friend was short and heavy. "Please stop. They're watching me." He never heard from them again. The following week, a dark SUV appeared outside Fischer's office. It stayed for hours. When he approached it, it drove off without a word. After that, he stopped giving interviews. He told close colleagues that the story was bigger than he'd imagined. He feared that exposing certain names would lead to something irreversible. But even silence has a sound, and Fischer knew it. The more he tried to step back, the more people asked for answers. Online investigators, journalists, and fans pieced together timelines, tracing the movements of D4vd, his team, and their associates in the days before and after Celeste's death. Patterns emerged: overlapping GPS data, deleted social media posts, flights that didn't match public appearances. To outsiders, it looked like a cover-up woven through routine. And then, almost out of nowhere, another voice surfaced. A young woman claiming to be close to the situation reached out to a reporter with a message: "Steve isn't lying. He just doesn't know everything." The person who moved the Tesla was told to. It wasn't their decision. That single message reignited the fire. If she was telling the truth, then someone above the friend, the one who gave the order, was still free, watching as the world argued over pieces of their secret. No one ever confirmed who sent that message. Some said it was a friend themselves, try to ease guilt without exposure. Others believed it was a warning. But to Fischer, it was confirmation that he'd been circling the truth all along. The deeper he went, the closer he came to something dark enough to scare even him. He stopped mentioning names altogether. He began locking away his notes. When asked if he feared for his safety, he only said, "I fear for what happens if I stop." Months passed. The police gave no new statements. The case faded again from headlines. But the whispers never stopped. People claimed to see the Tesla's ghost image online, dash cam clips, supposed sightings, fragment of code from Tesla servers. Some said the company quietly assisted investigators behind the scenes. Others said they were silenced by non-disclosure agreements. But no one could silence Fischer's truth. Someone moved that car. And the reason they moved it might be the key to understanding everything that happened to Celeste. He often replayed one of his recordings, the one where the friend's voice broke. The same trembling sentence every time. She didn't deserve that. For Fischer, it wasn't just evidence. It was a haunting echo of humanity buried under guilt. And that's where the story shifts from investigation to tragedy. Because at its core, this isn't a story about technology or fame. It's about fear. How it drives people to hide what they can't face, how it turns friends into strangers, and truth into shadows. The Tesla may have moved, but the weight it carried never left. Fischer's last public statement came 6 months after his first interview. It was quiet, almost poetic. "I know who moved the car," he said again. But the truth isn't about who did it. It's about why they thought they had to. Then he disappeared from public view. No more interviews. No new updates, just a silence that felt deliberate, as if saying more would cost him something he couldn't afford to lose. Today, the D4vd Tesla case remains unsolved. The police never confirmed Fischer's claims, nor did they deny them. The family of Celeste still waits for closure, and the rest of us are left piecing together fragments of a story that feels more like confession wrapped in mystery. Every so often, a new clip or rumor surfaces. A shadow on a street camera, a voice in a podcast, a half-erased tweet. Each time, it sparks the same debate. Is the truth really out there, or was it buried with the car itself? Maybe Fischer was right when he said the truth always shows up eventually. Maybe it's just waiting for the right moment to surface. Until then, all we can do is remember Celeste, not for how she died, but for the silence she left behind. And maybe that's the real mystery. Not who moved the Tesla, but why no one stopped them.